The old taxi rolled away from the airport curb, its engine coughing like it had secrets to hide. Derek Matthews leaned back, smirked, and loosened his tie. Man, one more year, he laughed into his phone, and I'm walking away with $500 million. The driver's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He said nothing. Outside, the city lights blurred past. Inside that cab, betrayal was being confessed in real time. Derek bragged about Brianna's kindness, about how easy she was to fool, about the other woman waiting in Miami. She thinks it's love, he scoffed. I think it's business. The driver swallowed hard, because Derek didn't know the truth. He didn't know the quiet old man driving him was Theodore Chambers, the billionaire grandfather who promised his dying daughter one thing: protect my child, no matter the cost. When Derek finally stepped out of that cab, he walked away laughing. But every word he spoke had already sealed his fate. And that's where her story truly began. Before we dive deeper, please, if you're listening to this right now, I want to prove my stepmom wrong. She said I can't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter. Subscribe to Jossie's Folklore, and let's keep breathing life into tales that refuse to die. Now, let's continue. The taxi smelled faintly of old leather and peppermint oil, the kind of scent that lingered after years of long nights, quiet regrets, and stories never told. Theodore Chambers sat behind the wheel, shoulders slightly hunched, gray cap pulled low over his brow. To anyone watching, he was just another tired driver trying to survive the city. But behind those tired eyes lived a man who had built empires. Theodore had once owned entire blocks of this city. Glass towers, private jets, boardrooms where people trembled when he cleared his throat. Yet tonight, none of that mattered. Not the billions, not the legacy, not the power. Only Brianna. The airport doors slid open, and Derek Matthews stepped out like the world owed him something. Tailored navy suit, designer carry-on, that confident, careless walk of a man who had never truly struggled a day in his life. He glanced at his phone, frowned, then waved lazily at the taxi. Yeah, that's me, Derek said, tossing his bag into the trunk without even looking at the driver. Midtown, and step on it, will you? Long flight. Theodore nodded slowly, voice calm and steady. Long day for everyone, son. Derek snorted. Yeah, well, some of us are about to be rewarded for it. The taxi pulled away from the curb. Silence stretched for a few seconds, the kind that makes people uncomfortable. Derek hated silence. Silence gave room for thoughts, and Derek preferred noise. He pulled out his phone. Vanessa, he said, grinning. Guess who just landed? Theodore's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Vanessa. That name hit him like a dull ache to the chest. Brianna had mentioned it once. Just a co-worker, Derek had said. She's dramatic, Grandpa, Brianna had laughed, trusting in the way only kind people do. Derek leaned forward, lowering his voice like the driver wasn't even human. Baby, relax. I told you. She suspects nothing. He laughed. Loud. Careless. Come on, don't sound like that. One more year, maybe less. Once the papers are signed, I'm free. Half her inheritance, clean and legal. The city lights flickered across the rearview mirror. Theodore's jaw clenched. Half her inheritance. Derek continued, warming up now, like a man finally among friends. You should see her, Van. Always trying to help people. Volunteering. Smiling like the world never hurt her. Makes me sick sometimes. Theodore swallowed. Brianna had that smile because her mother, Theodore's daughter, had raised her with gentleness even while dying. She had taught her that kindness wasn't weakness. Derek had mistaken it for stupidity. I play my role, Derek said. Flowers, dinners, the whole fiancé act. But love, he scoffed. Love doesn't pay bills. Her last name does. The taxi stopped briefly at a red light. Theodore could feel his pulse in his ears. He remembered the hospital room, the machines, his daughter's fragile hand gripping his. Promise me, she had whispered. Promise you won't let the world harden her. He had promised. The light turned green. Derek laughed again, shaking his head. She actually thinks I'd stay after the wedding. Can you imagine? Me tied down to some soft-hearted charity princess. He lowered his voice further. Once I get the money, I'm filing for divorce. Claim emotional neglect. I already talked to a lawyer. Easy. Theodore's reflection stared back at him from the mirror. Older, yes, but sharper than Derek could ever imagine. You sound certain, Theodore said quietly. Derek shrugged. Life's about certainty, old man. Knowing which door to walk through. He paused, then added almost proudly, and knowing which people to use as stepping stones. Something inside Theodore shifted. Not rage. Not yet. Clarity. The rest of the ride unfolded like a confession Derek never meant to give. Phone calls, voice notes, laughing messages sent to Vanessa, complaints about Brianna's annoying morals, plans for a condo in Miami, jokes about prenups he intended to sabotage. Every word fell into Theodore's recorder. When the taxi finally pulled up to Derek's luxury apartment building, Derek checked his watch. About time, he muttered, tossing cash onto the seat. Keep the change. He stepped out, adjusting his suit, already dialing another call. He never looked back. Theodore stayed parked for a long moment. The city hummed around him, unaware that a man's fate had just been sealed in the back of a taxi. He reached up slowly and turned off the recorder. What would you do? The narrator asked softly. If you discovered the person you trusted most was only loving you for what you could give? Theodore exhaled. This ends now, he whispered. And for the first time in years, the billionaire wasn't thinking like a grandfather. He was thinking like a strategist. Theodore's office was a world away from the dim taxi interior. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering skyline, a kingdom built on steel and ambition. But today, the king's throne felt heavy, burdened by a promise. Derek Matthews paced like a caged lion. The man who had swaggered through the city with arrogant ease was now stripped of comfort, confronted by a quiet storm. Theodore sat behind his massive mahogany desk, fingers steepled, eyes steady. You don't know me, Derek, Theodore said softly, but I know you, and I know why you've been playing this game. Derek's smile flickered, then hardened. I'm not sure what you mean. Theodore tapped a button on the desk. The room filled with Derek's own voice, smug, careless, cruel. Every word recorded from that taxi ride. This conversation, Theodore said, is the truth. The truth your precious Brianna deserves. Derek's face paled as the words played back, his own betrayal echoing through the office like a judge's gavel. You planned to marry her for her fortune. You joked about divorce and a woman in Miami. Derek swallowed hard. I gave you a choice, Theodore said quietly. Walk away. $200,000. Sign this non-disclosure agreement, a restraining order. Never contact Brianna again. Derek's eyes flicked to the signed papers. He bit his lip. And if you don't, I expose you. To her. To your family. To your colleagues. To everyone who believes the lie you've been living. Silence. Derek's mask cracked. Finally, he nodded, trembling. Theodore stood, his voice calm but firm. Good choice. Derek left the office with his tail between his legs, swallowed by shame and fear. Days later, Brianna sat at her grandfather's grand dining table, tears shimmering as Theodore gently shared the truth. I'm so sorry, Bree, he said, voice thick. He wasn't who you thought. She shook her head, heartbreaking but grateful. I thought he loved me. Love, Theodore said, is shown by actions, not words. Brianna's phone buzzed with a warning. Derek had violated the restraining order. The police were involved. She wiped tears, the weight of betrayal settling deep. But through the pain, something new stirred. A genuine kindness that had always been there, waiting. A text from Isaiah, a teacher, a man who saw Brianna, not her wealth. She smiled faintly, and as the city lights twinkled outside, Theodore knew this was just the beginning. The weeks after Derek's departure were a quiet storm for Brianna. The lavish parties, the social media gloss, even the gentle hum of her grandfather's estate, all felt hollow without the warmth of trust. She wandered the marble halls, searching for the pieces of herself she thought she'd lost. One crisp autumn morning, she found herself in the school library. Isaiah, her high school teacher, was arranging books with the care of a man who cherished knowledge and life's simple treasures. His smile was easy, honest, a quiet contrast to the false glitter that had surrounded her recent days. "Brianna," Isaiah greeted softly. "I thought you might like this." He handed her a worn copy of Maya Angelou's poetry. She took the book, feeling the weight of his kindness. No hidden agendas, no malintentions, just pure, uncomplicated respect. Days turned into weeks, and their connection deepened, not through grand gestures or expensive gifts, but through late-night talks about dreams, fears, and the future. Theodore watched quietly from the sidelines, his heart lightening. Here was a man who didn't see Brianna as an inheritance or a prize, but as a person deserving of real love. One evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Theodore invited Isaiah to the family home. The grandfather's approval was quiet but unmistakable. "I trust you," Theodore said, "because you see Brianna, not her fortune." Brianna smiled, hope flickering in her eyes like the first light after a long night. She had been broken, but was no longer alone. Her heart, once guarded and bruised, was ready to heal. Love had found her, not in the hollow promises of a gold digger, but in the quiet strength of a man who valued her true self. The story ends not with a fairy tale, but with a promise that real love reveals itself through actions, not words. Moral of the story: life's cruel lessons often teach us the greatest truths. That love is not about wealth or status, but about trust, respect, and sacrifice. Theodore's unwavering promise to protect his family shows us the lengths we'll go for those we love. And Brianna's journey reminds us all that healing is possible when we open our hearts to truth and kindness. If this story touched you, hit that subscribe button for more emotional tales from Jossie's Folklore. And even if it didn't, come on, subscribe anyway. We'll win you over next time. Drop a comment, like the video, and let's keep the stories alive. Thanks for watching.